You have these concepts or ideas that like you articulate in this certain way that's like very simple, but I've never thought to put it that way, regardless of how simple it is. And they're like very profound. Like your whole we all maybe not all of us, but we have this thing about like I think it is all humans. This like desire to be overcome by something. And it's like I don't know. I think it's lack of what we want to be overcome by is like God, like the presence of God. But we like put other things in that little slot and it almost like doesn't matter what it is. Like the other day I was real pissed off. I was like snapping out and that was like one of the first time that's the only time I can remember like ever in my life being like, nope, I'm gonna turn this around. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
wanna like even if it's like it doesn't matter what emotion it is. It's like
Yeah, I think it is like a misplaced God thing. Um, but sometimes, I mean, what is being overcome by God? Like, I feel like sometimes, it's like the romanticized ideas of certain things, like traveling, like being overcome with like the happenings of a new place or a new beautiful landscape or, I think some people can go to museums and be overcome with art galleries. Um, I think it's like an orientation thing where like, especially today, like we're all sort of programmed to like seek being overcome by outrage. Um, there's like if you watch CNN, um, overheard a conversation. I didn't get involved, but they were saying how Trump's going to deport all the black people, and it's like if
who
you
said this?
somebody, I just was overhearing their conversation, and I'm like,
You know, I didn't want this to be a political podcast, but I don't think there's any way for it not to be. I was just thinking about this at the gym like earlier today. I'm like, uh who's that quote? I forget who it's by. It was like, it might be C.S. Lewis, where it's like, why do you all you ever talk about is politics or religion? And it's like, because those are the only things worth talking about. It's like I don't really want to talk about politics, and it's not like that's not even the way I look at it. I know that's how it sounds or appears to people, but it's like I'm not interested in the teams. I'm
yeah,
interested in the values and like the fundamental like preservation of principles that I believe are sacred. And although there is a party that seems to be interested in doing that more, you know, it's not like I'm totally fine with pointing out when they're not.
yeah. I think it couldn't really be live from Babylon if we weren't going to be critical of everything going on
Yeah,
in
that's what
Babylon.
so I'm like editing clips and I'm like every clip is like us just being judgmental about something, but it's like, bro, it's like it's so funny how like there is like this revival happening and the right's like they notice there's a correlation between the lack of God and like problems. So like let's bring back God and let's bring back Jesus and there's like this Jesus movement.
Hmm.
And like even the left, what's hilarious is like even they're like both sides, they're like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They're both like, the left's like, no, your interpretation of Jesus is wrong. And they're like pointing it out, like, even though they don't, like, most of them don't believe in God and they're godless, they're like, that's like, what people don't understand is like,
I hate to say it, but I do
it's the
think
preservation of truth. Like, I'm not trying to, we are judgmental to like a certain degree, but it's like, dude, Jesus was like everybody's wrong because Jesus was like actually walking around saying, no, you're all wrong. You know what I mean? He's like, no, you're all wrong. I'm wrong. Personally, you're wrong.
true. Yeah.
We're all wrong. Because there's only one person who's right, and that's God. And we're destined to like stray from that. But it's just so funny how there's no like it seems like the further you stray away from God, the more there's like this gravitational pull back to him. At least that's what I see when I look at society. And it's like, it's like it is manifesting in like these twisted kind of like ways, but both sides, like the right and the left, are like, that's what they're doing. They're just doing it in different directions to the same conclusion, and they're not like, people aren't quite getting it right, you know?
Yeah, but I think some of it's sometimes, not all the time, but I think a lot of Christians have been manipulated into like, people try to simplify God by just saying, oh, God is love, you know, God is mercy. Like Jesus, like even the Pope said, right? That like we're supposed to just let everyone in. Like it's a sin to close your doors to people in need.
The Pope's a fucking idiot.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
but
don't, you know what I mean?
yeah, but it's like,
Catholic, like, I have no problem with Catholics or Catholicism to the degree that it's like biblical, which a lot of it's not. But the Pope is like, dude, this is like, like, what is going on, dude? It's like,
this
what is going on?
podcast just took a crazy turn. Fuck the Pope, he said.
Well, bro, I don't. I
Yeah,
just
but
don't. They're like,
yeah, I mean,
it is anti-Christ. Some of the things he's saying. Like, I'm about Christ. I'm not about Protestantism, no matter like what denomination it is. I'm not about Catholicism. I'm about Christ.
yeah, yeah. But
So
but
I
I
don't,
think
quite frankly, I don't care if anybody has a problem with me saying that.
I've met really good people that were hardcore liberals that honestly are just bleeding heart people. They just want to help everybody, you know? They have no concept of like, it's like this worldview, kind of what I was trying to explain last week with the whole justice versus mercy thing, where like that seems to be like the spectrum of people's understanding of God is like some people take on this whole God is love, God is mercy, and they totally like eliminate the just aspect of it.
Yeah, well, if you don't know somebody very well, your interpretation and understanding of their character is very limited.
Yeah,
You know, you know what I'm saying? Like, not that I am like a expert or authority in God, but it's like, I think it would be a lot easier for people to just like simplify it in just, if you think about like what the ideal father is, like the archetype of a father, like that's what God is. And it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. He's like, what makes a dad good depends on the situation. And he responds to different situations in different ways. Like his idea of, or word on determination on what's right, depends on the situation and the circumstance.
Well, that's
And
why
it's like it's
there's
not always right to sometimes um you know, enabling people or confirming their pathological ideas is it's not helpful. It's not helping anybody. You know what I mean?
oh,
So, and it's not helping society either. Like you this is so what's so fascinating. Like I have relatives, dude, that are very liberal. Um some of them have kids my age though. So like you've had kids and you like and their kids are great kids, successful kids, and they're very good parents. But there's this cognitive dissonance where they like understand it when it applies to practical application in raising kids. But when it applies to like the community or like a societal level, they think that like implementing policies that are the inverse of what they did with their kids is going to work. And it's like very confusing to me.
yeah, I think it's the whole, again, if God is just all merciful, then like, even though I disagree with it, maybe like, oh, you can do what you want. Like, oh, you can just behave however you want. You can just do as thou wilt, basically, is what it ends up coming back to. Um, and I feel like there's a lot of people that, even though like internally they really don't agree with it, but there's this whole, but I don't want to tell anybody what to do because everybody's free to do whatever they want to do. So like I'd rather be on the case of like, no, you're free to do as you want without having any regard for the like, yeah, you can do that, but you shouldn't. Right?
Uh,
Like we live in a free society. Anybody can do whatever they want, technically, but like, should you just do anything? There's like there has to be, and like being all the way on the justice side without mercy is totalitarianism shit too. Both sides lead to the same thing. It's like
yeah.
without that balancing of the scales, you get awful shit on both ends, and you get manipulated into thinking, like conservatives right now are all pro-Trump. Trump's the savior. Trump. There's some people calling Trump a fucking prophet, right? Meanwhile, his solution to the border is this digital ID bullshit, which is what
I don't know. I don't pay any attention to it, but what does that even mean?
it means. We're all gonna have to comply. Um,
What's
and
digital ID?
digital ID is we're all gonna go into a fucking database where the government's gonna be able to track us like 24/7. Um, and it's going to be linked basically then to the what they eventually want is that basically cryptocurrency. Get rid of paper money, have everything be a digital currency.
It's where you know who one of the pioneers of digital currencies was?
Mm-mm.
You
No,
don't know?
no. Tell us.
The co-founder of PayPal? Do you know who that is?
Would that be Mr. Elon Musk?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, what?
oh, the guy that's
I
just been
don't
given laissez-faire access to our.
seriously, dude, I'm not
The guy that wants to microchip
I just try
everyone's
to honestly,
brains.
dude, I'm not loyal to anything but truth.
Yeah.
And like I'm not perfect about that. That's something I start this is why I try not to pay attention to politics and I pay attention to God. Um because when you pay attention to God, you have the correct interpretation of politics, I think. Like even when I start to pay more attention to politics, like I start to do the same thing. I get roped into the same thing where I'm like defending my team all the time. It's like, you know what I mean? Like put me in, coach. Like I
That's what,
don't
I like the cliff notes. Give me the cliff notes. Give me like basic. you know.
Yeah, and then let me read my Bible for an hour or two, and then like marinate on it for a while, and then you
Yeah.
like you have a clearer interpretation of things. Um, nah, dude, I'm very suspicious of Elon Musk. So like, but also, um, I don't think he's a Nazi. You know, it's like, but like to your point, I also I think you're kind of right about that thing. I don't want to get into like any specific current affairs deeper than this, but like what you said the other day about his you're like, you know, he's smart, like he knew what he was doing when he did
Yeah,
that
yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
That's what I mean, dude. It all seems like a show
Yeah, I mean, these people
to
are
me.
literally sacrificing people. I mean, to this, he sacrificed his child. Like, I know we don't want to, whatever. We can fucking edit it out if you want to. I don't give a fuck. This guy's supposed to be one of the smartest people on the planet Earth, and he gave his kid hormone blockers, right? Not thinking that there would be any long-term damage
I
because
always
that's what the
forget that he
doctor
did
said.
that.
And now he's saying, "Well, the woke of mind virus killed my son." That's an almost exact quote from him.
No, you did.
No, you sacrificed your fucking son to the fucking demonic bullshit.
Yeah, it's not whether it's metaphorically or not, like it doesn't matter. It's like you're
No, I mean, if
is
in
it like if you're not standing up to that, what you're doing is by proxy sacrificing children to a demonic ideology. That's
well, and in terms of altars, like, what are you powering there? You know, and now you want us to believe that, oopsie, that was a mistake. I didn't know any
that's
better.
the thing, dude, is like that's what I'm trying to say though, is this is my struggle is not getting too conspiratorial and understanding that these are actual human beings and people who are going to make mistakes like any human would and change their minds about things. But
Sure.
also, there seems to be a little bit too much going on that it's like hard for me to buy, like in terms of his past. It's hard for me to buy that um there wasn't some kind of planned trajectory. Cuz
Or
it's
even
like, and I don't buy anybody that like the government's letting shoot rockets into the fucking atmosphere is like DARPA's not even doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like like
yeah, I mean, he's got millions of satellites orbiting the globe, Starlink.
so like somebody's got you by the balls because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, but my question is, was it all planned out, or could it have been like a pivot? Like he saw where things were going to go in the political atmosphere, political landscape was changing, and then to keep all of the government programs that he's basically running, like Tesla's never turned a profit. That's all government subsidies. Starlink, I'm pretty sure, is mostly government subsidies. Like all of the major projects that he's working on, it's taxpayer money,
Yeah.
right? So when the left was in power and that was great, whatever, maybe right now he's seeing a major opportunity to increase the scope of what he's trying to accomplish, which might be, maybe he has good intentions. Maybe he thinks it's for the greater good of humanity. That I can't attest to. But I don't think it's smart for us to like put all of our chips in the basket of the guy that says AI will 100% mean the extinction of humanity. And then the guy's like throwing everything he has at it and like
Right.
putting chips in pigs' brains. And
Well, that's what I mean, dude, is like I tried I have this thing where when I look at politics or look at this thing, I'm like, I assume that it's all a show and it's all rigged.
Yeah,
And it's like
because
planned out like somebody wrote a script.
yeah,
Cause that's how it appears to me. And I'm not dogmatic about this. I go back and forth. I'm not like saying I would put all my chips in that basket either. But things sometimes, dude, sometimes they just like, and God does this too, like with like when you look at your personal life, things like fall into place in a weird way. It's like, well, somebody's planning this. So like it could just be reality, and like things are like in the realm of politics are falling into a certain place that appears like way too coincidental. Um but I just don't. Yeah, Neuralink, dude, like I think that's not that we're in the end times, because I think we're in like the setting the stage for the end times period. Like I don't think we're deep in it, like all these the people that go way too, they get
yeah, yeah.
obsessed with the end times. They're like, Jesus is coming tomorrow. Like I don't think that's happening. Um, I think the stage is being set, but I'm pretty sure that Neuralink or something like that, it might not be Neuralink specifically.
Could be the Chinese version.
I think it's the mark of the beast. I think that's what it's talking about. When we get to this point where like we I think the mark of the beast is the one unforgivable sin, which is the blaspheming of the Holy Spirit. I think that's what it's talking about, where like something happens where we're unable to return to where we came from, which is like, you know, spirit fused with flesh creating a soul. And then like there's this implant that like blocks that from happening. And what's going to happen is like there are going to be all of these miracles that happen through this technology. Like somebody already has it in their head. I saw him, I think he was on Rogan's podcast like a year ago. Um, and this dude, I don't know if he like was paralyzed and now isn't, or like something like that, but he was like he got like the prototype of it or something like that. And it's like, well, we're going to be able to cure your blindness like Jesus did. And you're going to be able to walk again, and you're going to be able to live forever. And the blaspheming of the Holy Spirit is denying the eternal life that we were given in favor of the demonic inversion of it.
Yeah, the counterfeit.
Yeah, the counterfeit, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Because that's the blaspheming of the Holy Spirit. Like we were promised an eternal life. Um, you know, we're in the womb. We're in the gestation. That's why like all these marriage and birth analogies are used in the Bible. Like Christ is the bridegroom, like we're in the womb, we're in the gestation period, and we get our actual life by having faith that we actually will have one once we die and are reborn in Christ. We get our eternal life. And it's as simple as accepting him. We've already won the battle. What the enemy wants to do, like all they can do is try to get people to not accept that and lose their salvation.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few different ways the enemy tries to skin a cat, but more or less, I I'm of the opinion where like, I don't watch a lot of documentaries. Like, I don't, and I try not to intake. I know it's probably gonna sound wild, but like, I try not to go down rabbit holes or whatever because, like, any concept, idea, or view that I have, I try to make it like as simple and truthful as possible.
You start to dispense with your own discernment, or you can.
Yeah, because what happens is it gets so convoluted, seemingly on purpose. Like it gets so, there's just too much where it's like, it's like a soup sandwich. You can't make anything fucking out of it.
Yeah.
Um,
There's too many possible options to choose from.
yeah, and I think, you know, to some degree, like that's why Christ spoke in parables. You know what I mean? Where it's like sometimes the easiest way, like, to understand something is through metaphors. You know what I mean? Where like we try, and we do it all the, like I do it. People do it all the time. Like we try, like, to overcomplicate something and then explain it as if our overcomplication of it, like, makes us more educated in the thing.
Yeah, parables are wisdom. Like the Bible's written to be like wisdom without any excess or unnecessary data. You know what I mean? There's like when he talks in parables, there's like so much, there's so many layers to it. Each one's got like at least, I mean, there's like 3 or 4 layers at least. And like every time I reread them, like I find a new one, but they're like very short. You know what I mean? It's like not even a short story. It's like a poem length. And it's like somehow there's like this insurmountable amount of wisdom packed into these little things. But what we do is we think like, well, we can like become wise through data. So we just accrue as much data as we possibly can. We're like, well, if I just explain this 600 different ways, like it doesn't even compare like in terms of wisdom.
Yeah, but I think that's, we were talking the other day. I feel like that's like what a lot of people that are searching for like this life changing experience, whether it's like, oh, a vacation abroad or um, a career path or whatever it is, like a life experience. So, for some people, like they romanticize partying. Um, there's something that's like romanticized, that's like this.
Yeah, I really identify with that one.
Yeah, but like I think most of us do it. Like we've been programmed that way. Like commercials and everything. Like, we have this idea of how great something's going to be, and a lot of times we experience the thing, and it leaves us longing. What I honestly think, like the only thing that can be life changing isn't new sensory input or information. It's strictly wisdom. And if wisdom's the only thing that can change your entire perception of everything, and wisdom only comes from God, then what you're really looking for is God. And you're just like whatever that little hole is inside of you that you just keep stuffing shit into. Like there's only one thing that's actually going to change. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like a lot of the new understandings that I have weren't even directly like sought after. It's like things just almost seem to find me, and then like I sit and like stew on them. You know what I mean? Which unintentionally, was how reading the Bible was explained to me years ago, even though I really never did it back then. It's that like you're supposed to read like a small portion and sit with it. And the metaphor was it's like a tea bag in hot water. Like at a certain point, the water ceases to be water and it becomes tea. I think the reason why some people struggle with religion in general is like everybody wants like they want that feeling forever. You know, like you
Yeah,
want,
or like at the push of a button.
yeah,
Well, I don't know, dude. It's like how society is nowadays. Or like, and I was like that with drugs. You want like the instant fix gratification. We're like wired for convenience. It's everything.
yeah. It's like don't
From like how we approach medicine to
don't
our
diet
our
and
phones to like
exercise.
yeah to
Ozempic.
like instead of like to everything. It's like literally that themes in everything, even down to like finding yourself or like who you truly are. It's like we'd rather like adopt some identity. It's like it's cool to wear streetwear and go to the gym now. Like we'll do that. You know what I mean? It's like
I do like that trend though.
yeah, it's one of the better ones.
Yeah, it's better than the.
But it's like it's like there's this
At least it's more modest.
the trend it's on the positive side, like the trends seem to be getting better. Like it's better than like when we were in high school. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that was fucked up.
Remember the scene kids?
Yeah, yeah,
It was like goth, but like really homosexual.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
just it's tough. It's interesting. I took this course in college, Descent in America, and it kind of talked about how like the way American society tends to like the hippie movement was like the big one that I remember. But like they were like anti-US government originally, like anti-war, and like you could identify with who was on your team, so to speak, who was a dissenter of our society by the long hair, whatever. And then, they blame it on capitalism, but I think it's more than that. But our society tends to take that thing and then commodify it and make it cool. So what you were doing is like a stand against the man. Like now the man's doing it too. Everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
And it just turns into a fad and then you fade away.
Yeah. Like when the left talks about fascism, when they just got done like cheering on the government merging with like giant corporations and pharmaceutical companies to force vaccination of an experimental drug and all citizens. It's like,
Well, it's like what
you
happened
know
to
what I
the.
mean? It's like that's the definition of fascism.
Yeah, but they had the last good movement they had, in my opinion, was the March on Wall Street, right?
Yeah. There's people who think that's uh Wall Street got real freaked out and then like doubled down on their investing into, like all the puppet string pullers. Like that's what contributed to like all this craziness now. I don't like really think that's the case, but
I haven't heard
I
that
don't think they
theory.
were that concerned about that.
But what I found interesting is it seemed like there were two positive movements, seeming like there was the Tea Party on the right
Yeah.
and there was the March on Wall Street, and both were like, okay, good. Both fucking disappeared. Like in the
No,
middle of the night.
they morphed into different things.
Yeah,
Like
but
the libertarian movement became like anarchists and then like there's just there's this there's this thing about movements, dude. It's like when you when everybody's like convening with like allowing themselves to be like possessed by a spirit, whether it's like I talk like this, I don't like metaphorically, but I don't know how metaphorical it is actually. Because it's like they allow themselves to be overtaken by this thing, and then like it's not the right spirit because it's not the holy one. And then it like morphs into like it always morphs into something else than like what it started. Like, do you know the when they have all these slogans, you know that like the original like the etymology of the word slogan is like March of Death or something relating to that, which is like that's perfect, you know? It's like so I don't know, man. There's like something and it's like it's weird how it's like how non-conformity has been perverted into conformity. It's like so
Yeah, it almost makes you like want to give up, you know? And I think that's kind of the point. The In that Descent in America class, the conspiracy theory of the whole thing, and the class was um, the professor of the class like wrote the book for the class. He was one of those guys, and he like at the end of the semester, he's like, "If you guys want, you can come up. I'll sign your books."
right.
But
Did he hang out with Timothy Leary and all
probably, yeah.
those acid dropping
But
communists?
his his theory basically was that the right to protest was created as a means to allow Americans to get their outrage out and then just like fade away and have nothing ever actually change at all. Like, go ahead, protest for a few weeks, and nothing will change.
Yeah, I don't know if he's wrong.
Yeah, but he was trying to blame the founding fathers, which I don't think that's.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I wholly disagree with that. Um, but at the same time, like, it is interesting that like kind of seems to be the case.
Yeah, I don't know what it is
I think the problem is you have to be willing to die for it.
for
Um,
what you believe.
yeah, I mean, that's
You have
how.
to be yeah, you have to be willing to die for I don't know, divine principles, God's word.
Yeah, I mean, that's the civil rights movement. Like, those people were willing to die for what they believed in.
You have to be willing to die for um you have to believe that everything was created for a certain context and that context is right and you have to believe it enough that you're willing to die as a result of defending it. I don't know. There's certain things that get me real uh everything is I think it's like a bad copy, dude, of that. Like I really just think everybody's and just like I'll just talk about me and my experience. Like my experience is like looking back at my life now with the kind of lens that I've developed um over the last year or two growing in relationship to God. Everything I was doing was just I was seeking him but trying to do it in this counterfeit way. And I really do think that's what everybody's doing. And it, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I just think that there's, solutions not like easy. When you look at, like, especially on a societal level, and I think that's where people get super jaded. Um, because if you like really go down the rabbit hole and you look at the monstrosity of a system that's like weaponized against the people, basically. Um, and then you have, groups of people in college like wearing Bernie shirts. It's like, well, like actually, every politician, every member of the machine is against us, right? And I felt like,
We have to assume they are.
yeah, I mean, I felt like back in the 90s, I want to say it was like back when Sublime was making music. I feel like it was like more commonly like common sense, like, well, they're politicians, like they're lawyers. Like most all lawyers are scumbags. Like all of our politicians are scumbags, and like it's us against them. Like it was common sense. Like, no, of course Bernie Sanders doesn't give a fuck about us.
Well, that was common sense for um Democrats, like back when I used to be one during the Occupy Wall Street movement. It was like comments, and then like all of the stances flipped. It's like they used to be free speech, they used to be anti-war. They used to be like very suspicious of pharmaceutical companies and big corporations, hence like occupying Wall Street. And then it's like 5, 10 years go by and a couple like protest movements, and then like it flips the whole thing to where like the right's now the one going like the side going no, like no, big pharmaceutical companies aren't going to force a drug into our bodies. Like no, we're sick of paying for wars everywhere. Yes, we're going to defend freedom of speech. Like
The same party that tried to censor Eminem 25 years ago.
right. Right. Like literally the I think it's the NAACP, like liberal organizations like were suing and protesting on behalf of neo-Nazis right to protest like decades ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Because they believed in the fact that the principle of freedom of speech, the word, like that there's something sacred about it and it's to be protected no matter whether or not our party agrees with it. In terms of our political stance, it's like that's how I look at things. And then like so it's hard in like today's political climate to not get, first of all, you're interpreted as like, oh, you're on the other team. And it's hard also not to get pulled like gravitationally into that thing. Cause it's like when I'm no, like I will align with Trump to the extent that he's aligning with the value that I believe in, the sacred value that I believe is like in alignment with God's word and what God would want. So like to the extent that he does, as soon as he stops doing that, you know what I mean? I'm not a fan of the guy because I don't really think any of these shit bags align with those values. I think there's like I don't think that these I don't know that any of them are willing to die for them. And I also don't know that like people be like, well, Trump got shot at multiple times. I don't know, dude. Like, fucking Hollywood, dude. They make movies all the time.
Yeah,
You know what I
there's
mean? This guy's got more money than a movie budget. Like,
he
I
does,
hate to be like, I sound like a lunatic, but it's like
but there's no way to know anymore. That's the problem.
there's not, because everything's so crazy. It's like
Yeah, I mean that's
I don't put faith in man, and I don't,
that's a tough lesson to learn.
bro. I don't subscribe to political parties. I have things that I believe in. Like, I used to be a liberal, like very liberal, because
Borderline
more of
communist.
like their political stances aligned with the things I believe in. I'm not trying to join a team. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then the Occupy Wall Street thing, like, kind of merged with the libertarian thing. It was like this libertarian was more like liberal. So there was like this element of like, well, maybe we'll protect guns and stuff too. So I was like, I can really get on board with that, like, for a while. And it's like, I don't know, dude. That's the one that gets me like really fired up when people who are Christians think like we need to change gun laws. It's it's like we do in terms of like making them more accessible and normalized actually. Um it's that's the thing that drives me nuts, cuz it's like, so you don't believe that God created every creature with the intention of it having access to the best tools to defend its life. Like, you don't believe that's something, or the life of its family or its property.
Well, instantly, if you bar access to guns, whoever doesn't have access is subhuman, right? Like, no, only these people can have guns for these reasons that we made up, right? And the only people that can be protected by armed bodyguards are the elitists. It's not going to be you. It's not going to be me. And the CIA and our corrupt government will keep making sure that the criminals have a steady access to guns. Like, no matter what, we all know that's what's going to happen.
Well, it's deeper than that though. That's like the argument's framed wrong. Most of
Yeah.
these political arguments are. That's why I don't like have um the patience or fortitude to like talk to anybody but you about them, because it's like even with the abortion thing, like the whole argument's framed wrong, because the Second Amendment thing, we'll just start there. It's like the starting place of the argument is like whether or not the government will grant us the privilege to be able to possess a gun. It's like it's starting from the wrong place, because no, it's like the government, it's not we don't cede them power to determine whether or not we have the privilege of having the ability to exercise what God created us to have the ability to exercise. You know what I'm saying? It's like that is something that's like divine and our birthright, and we set up a government to protect that, not to grant us that right, not to determine whether or not we can have it. Like, we have it. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. But
and it's the same thing like with like all of these stupid arguments. It's like the abortion ones, it's so dumb, because it's like I talked to, there are there are people, obviously, but on this planet didn't who were born like in a time where um not 1 year in their life did cell phones not exist. And like these are the people influencing kind of like pop cultures, like determining like where things go. And it's just so goofy to me to it's narcissistic in a way to think that your opinion on abortion matters that much when you can't comprehend the fact that before you were born and for like maybe I don't know, like until the industrial revolution, dude, like nobody looked at anything the way we do. Like in a historical context, these weren't things to like even have debates about, like gender, abortion, like any of this goofy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, part of what you were saying earlier, like every communist revolution, and I only know this because my great grandfather and my grandfather went through one in the Ukraine with Stalin. But like the first thing that they do is they get rid of God. They take God out of the schools. They take God out of everything because the idea is if you don't have fundamental rights given by God, if you don't believe in God, um, then your rights come from who?
The government,
Yeah. So
the state.
if you can control like people that way, that's like, I guess, the most alluring thing about Christianity to me, and it was never truly explained to me, so I never had a care for it, is like the majority of the Bible, and I'll probably say this every podcast that we have until my teeth fall out, but the majority of it is God taking his people and freeing them from tyranny.
Yeah. It just took me almost 30 years to realize that
Yeah.
like all of my values aligned with Christianity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, but
Because
like,
like we have this like societal idea about what Christianity actually is. And there's like a lot of factors that play into that. Um, like you talk about with the persona that seems like a lot of Christians just morph into. They just like morph into this like the same person. And then
yeah,
like that person's corny, so you're like, I don't want to be around that person. Or like this idea that Jesus was like a socialist. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
you hear liberals say that all the time. It's like you're not reading. You've never read anything. Like, don't tell me about what's. It's the same. Like, it's so intellectual, like pseudo intellectual, and like just frankly stupid because it's the same thing they do with like their articles from like the Huffington Post or like whatever they read. It's like they think that like citing that is enough, like it qualifies them enough. It's like, look at this thing I read. Like you don't read this. I'm better than you. I read this thing. So it's like when you like get into an argument with someone, like they send you a link to the damn article. It's like you don't have the ability to like create your own opinion about anything. And it's like you're cute. You're really cute. It's like you know what I mean, dude. Like
Yeah, that's why I know this sounds retarded. Like it's one of the reasons why I don't like constantly watch podcasts cuz I see it in like uh friends, family, whatever. They're always getting their information even if it's like not political necessarily. Like they're always getting their information from like a certain personality, and it's like you start to adopt, whether or not you realize it, like that sort of worldview and talking points. Um, and it's almost unavoidable. Like it's why I try like as best I can like to get the big picture of like what's going
Yeah.
on and then sit with it myself and like really ask myself, well, like, what do I think about that? Like, what, in the context of Christianity, like, what does that actually mean? And when you look at things through that lens, it's like you're actually trying to take our rights away. Like, you're actually trying to deceive people and keep them fighting with each other because then and only then, if we're sitting here arguing about fucking pronouns and shit, we're never going to realize that like we're actually on the same fucking team.
Yeah. And most of the time, dude, my problem isn't this is the thing is like I don't pay attention to the political stances as much as I do like the value that's like at the core of that stance. And most of the time I don't even want to have anything to do with the arguments because whether it's the right or the left, most of the time the argument is it's it's framed completely wrong.
But it has to be in order, to get people to argue about it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like if you put it in like the appropriate context, most people would be like, well, no, that's crazy. That's why you can't call abortion like killing a baby. And I'm not saying that, you know, that you shouldn't be able to kill babies. I'm just saying, it is killing a baby. And if we had that discussion, right,
Yeah.
most people would be like, nah, you're not even comfortable with saying the words killing a baby. So if that's how the conversation was phrased, I don't think we would have as many abortions as we're having. Like you have to frame it incorrectly in order for there even to be an argument about the thing.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're at the point where you're trying to like find the value, it's like because they're hiding the value. That like if that we were talking about the value, most people would be like,
What's the value that life's sacred?
yeah,
Yeah.
It's like we all inherently know that. So that's why you can't say killing a baby. You have to say women's health rights. And now it's like, well, I don't want to be
Women's
against.
access to healthcare.
Well, I'm not against women's access to health care, obviously.
Yeah. So yeah. And then
So therefore, I guess I'm
well,
for abortion now.
yeah. What will people think of me? And then like as soon as you're like, no, I'm pro life or anti abortion, they're like, you hate women.
Must hate women, yeah.
It's like, no, I actually like women because I think like it like leads to a lot less pathology and mental health issues if women are held accountable for their decision making, and men are also.
True.
So like that's what I think, and I think it's traumatic for women to murder a child, whether they think so or not. I think it's traumatic for people to um accrue baggage from people, whether it's men or women, from sexual partners they've had that they didn't intend to marry. Like all of these things are like actually like I just care about people. Like I don't where I used to be wrong with like my that I don't agree with anymore with my like when I used to be more liberal, is that like what we should be striving for is rights and equality. Like I think it's like what we should be striving for is to become more responsible, competent, um, more productive, helpful members of society. So that, you know, we can do that in our own lives for our family and then for the community. And that God, you know, kind of created us all with different attributes, uniquely different attributes in order to be able to do that. And that's never going to make us equal, you know? There's not a problem with not being equal.
I think,
It's like the problem is like if you say something like that, it's been turned into this weird like we've been psyoped into thinking like inequality is congruent with um
equity.
well it's like the just like the whole all of those movements is like the lens people look through is well if like things are unequal then somebody's being oppressed and somebody's oppressing them.
Yeah, but that's where I think they've done a psyop on the word equal. It's like you are equal, like in the eyes of God, you're equal in the eyes of the law, but two equal people can do the same thing and achieve different results. And that's equitable, right? That's equity. It's like,
Equality and equity are two completely different things. Equity means equality of outcome.
yeah, but that's basically what
Not
they're
everybody's supposed
judging.
to have the same outcome.
Yeah.
And because people have different outcomes doesn't mean that somebody's being oppressed. That can happen for uh you know any myriad of reasons. Like the issue is like when you start to look at things that way, like it's a mind virus. Like you go crazy
Yeah,
because what
because,
you're doing is
yeah.
like you're you're going to find whatever you look for. You know, like you're
You can find somebody to blame if I do something and I don't get the result I want, right? And I've done it most of my life is I can point to any number of things as to why I didn't get the outcome. But if I don't blame myself, I'm never actually going to get the desired outcome. Nobody's going to come and hand it to me. Like I've tried and failed multiple things that I've watched other people do successfully. And I could sit here and be like, "Oh, it's because of this. It's because of that. It's because of some other thing." But like if I don't accept the personal responsibility and be like, "Nope, I fucked that up. I obviously didn't do it correctly or else it would have succeeded." Or sometimes just bad fucking luck. But like as long as you're pointing the finger anywhere else but you for your life's own outcome, you're stuck. Like you're never going anywhere.
yeah. Well, that's what I think that's what a lot of it is like people so like the younger generations like things have been so convenient for them their entire lives. Like they grew up there's the internet. There's a damn they get a damn smartphone when they turn 8 years old or whatever. It's like Target's 2 miles down the road. Do whatever you need. It's you know what I'm saying? You don't have to grow your food, you don't have to forage or hunt for anything, you don't have chores, you don't it's like
Don't know how to sweep a floor, use a broom.
that's what a lot that's what's like and then when you're not competent and you're not in the position in life that like you would like to be, you get resentful, and that starts to motivate your political ideologies.
Well, especially when
That's what do
one's
I know this from personal experience,
yeah.
you know? So
Well, especially when one's saying like, "No, it's not your fault actually. It's not your fault."
but it's people just don't wanna take responsibility for their lives.
Yeah.
A lot of it's the fault of parents nowadays.
Well, that and the programming, the technology, the smartphones. I mean, what are like a
Yeah, it's
lot of
all of it,
kids
but like, as a parent, that's your responsibility. Like, you can't let the state and pop culture and the internet raise your kids.
true.
That's why I think I'm not trying to tell anybody how to live, but that's why I think like um for me at least, like when I have kids and get married, like unless my wife's working from home, she's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Because I don't want those things raising my kids. And I think that's part of like I'm not I think it's part of like the feminist movement, dude, is like they like really it just like it started with women's suffrage and like what they wanted to do was be able to tax the entire population. And then, then our whole economy got dicked with like this like college loans, like everything like became more expensive. And now we're at a point where it's like required that the mother and father both have jobs.
Just to
And
provide.
and every kid goes to public schooling and is handed a smartphone like before their teens, right? And it's like, so the parents are like spending no time actually raising the kids. And I think it was set up this way. And I think it's wrong. And it's like, um, and I don't think there's a problem with saying that. Like, I think most things about the feminist movement are wrong because I care about women and I don't think it's good for women. I don't think it's what they want. I think there's a correlation between like, um, whatever women have been brainwashed into thinking is natural for them to want and the amount of women that have mental issues nowadays. I don't know that I know a female in her 20s that's not on several medications or
Me
has a
neither.
therapist, right?
True.
Could it be that there's something fundamentally wrong here? It's like, bro, I don't, and then it's like, I'm going, I'm going in, dude. It's like, I don't know. Seriously, dude. I don't, and this isn't a thing against women at all. Like I think there's problems with men too. Like one of them because I've been a male that's like caused problems like this. One of them is like if all the women are like that and then they throw a tantrum if you have any kind of like even attempt to have a civil discussion about it or like be like no, I don't want you to wear that when you go downtown. And they're like, well, you're trying to control me, like all this. Well, it's like, well, you're not somebody that I would ever marry but I'm a virile man in my 20s, so I will surely sleep with you. So then it's this snowball effect of trauma and like women are like, well, everybody's telling me that it's totally normal and there will be no consequences for me. I'm being encouraged by all pop culture and every song on the radio and wet ass pussy and whatever to like,
You just letting
I
them
should
use you for
I should be
sex.
just like men. It's like I don't know, dude. I have used people for sex. I don't like I have been a shitty person in the past and like I'm just being honest about it because I want to figure out what the problem is and like try to address the problem. But everybody needs to start being honest about these things. And we need to be able to have a conversation about like the flaws in feminism and all of these things if we ever want to get the root of these issues.
Well, I mean, to be fair, in a society where we were all taught in grade school that like we're just evolved monkeys and we have urges,
Yeah.
and it's not natural for you to, you know, deny yourself.
Monogamy is not natural.
Yeah, we were taught that too, you know. Like, well, no, technically, life, the ideal is for a man to impregnate as many women as humanly possible to pass on
That's
his
the problem with
genetics.
like these Andrew Tates and the red pill people is like, um,
Like, they're damaged. They're damaged men
yeah,
that believe that. They're traumatized men. Because yeah, the notion, right, of like this. Oh, it's like a superiority thing, right?
the problem is there's a lot of truth in what they say, and then like people, whether it's a movement or like a public figure, like people like make idols out of these people and put
Yeah.
their faith in them, and then they're like, well, I'm gonna take everything they say as gospel, or even if they don't, like it actually does influence your like the way you see things. If you like you say all the time, like listen to, you outsource your thinking to somebody else, like it's not good. But like what men need to do is like they need to be able to um we're supposed to be the leader. We need to be able to be in the garden, and um when Eve throws a tantrum about you saying, "No, you're not eating that fruit," like put the fruit down, hon. We need to be able to like weather that tantrum, and also like not.
Not succumb to our desire to maybe
Yes.
please
Thank you.
them and to have peace and whatever the short term, like, oh, if I give her this, what she's crying about, I can have
And also realize
immediate
that
peace.
like, well, Eve throws too many tantrums about when I tell her like not to mess with the fruit. So I don't think I would marry Eve, but I'll still sleep with her. Like that's not okay. And like this
No.
that's the problem with these red pill people is like there's this idea in our culture that like men need sex. Like men need, like no, men need to be able to like keep it in their fucking pants.
Yeah,
Like they
control
really do.
yourself.
Yeah.
Like if you look at your life in terms of like a story arc, like what's your main character story? Is that you succumb to a woman that uses your lust to manipulate you? Or is your story arc that you overcome lust, right? And therefore are able to actually determine like what a good woman is.
Yeah. This is my, I figured out all my issues with drugs and like addressed all that, and then the preceding 8 or 9 years was like this exact problem. Um, and it really is funny how it's like the same themes over and over again. Like whether it's in our lives or in the Bible, it's like Adam and Eve, and then it's like it's almost every story. It's like Ahab and Jezebel. And it's like you know what I mean. It's like no, but I did that thing for a while where it's like, well, I'm a man, I need sex. So, and then you like point the finger at them, and they point the finger at you, and
Meanwhile, you're both being traumatized by it because it's not what it was intended
it's
for.
the same thing that's happening with political parties. That's happening between men and women. They're just trying to divide people.
Yeah, and it's the same
And I don't know
thing.
if it's like any human conspiracy. I just think like I think, physical reality is a mirror of what's happening in the spiritual realm. And I think there's a war. And I think, the enemy is trying to uh divide, like that was before the garden. That's what happened. It's like there was an adversary try to dick with God's plans. And then
Yeah, and history keeps repeating itself, and in our individual lives, we keep going around the merry-go-round until we learn our fucking lesson.